Hi everybody, competition policy. Who enacts it? What are the aims of competition policy, and when do we see competition policy enacted? We're going to cover all three questions in this video. Let's start by who enacts competition policy. Well, in the UK, the main regulator is called the Competition and Markets Authority. Beneath them, however, you might have regulatory bodies who are specialised regulators who look over specific industries and companies operating within those industries. So for example, you have the ORR, that's the rail regulator in the UK, the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority, looking over airports and airlines, Ofcom, which is the telecommunications regulator, Ofwat, the water regulator, Ofgem, the gas and electricity regulator. So you might have these specialist regulators, known as regulatory bodies, but they work beneath the CMA and must report to the CMA. They are just specialised in those specific industries. Within the EU, you have the European Competition Commission, and they work within the same kind of context as the UK Competition Authority, except they oversee competition within the entire single market. So whilst the UK remains within the European Union, we still must ensure that European competition law is being followed as well. But the aims and the times that the EU will intervene as well with competition-related policy will be very similar to what we see in the UK. So what are the aims of competition policy in the UK, or generally throughout the EU? Well, it's always to ensure that the public interest is being protected. So if any time there are markets or there are companies who are exploiting the public interest or exploiting the public, whether that's charging excessive price or producing at too low levels of quantity, there are arguments for competition policy to be enacted in those instances. So what do we mean by protecting the public interest? Well, let's look more specifically at when the public interest could well be harmed. If there are monopolists or oligopolists in highly concentrated markets charging prices way beyond marginal cost, there is a rationale for competition policy to intervene. Any very highly concentrated markets, maybe competition policy will be enacted to liberalise those markets, maybe through privatisation or deregulation to promote competition and then competitive outcomes as a result. Maybe to ensure quality, to ensure standards, to ensure choice if monopolies are existing. To make sure that natural monopolies are regulated. We've learned from my previous video that unregulated natural monopolies in markets where a public service, an essential public service is being offered, monopoly outcomes will be terrible in those instances, so there is a rationale for regulation there. But if a natural monopoly is being privatised, to ensure that that privatisation is successful, there is a role for competition policy. And also to ensure that monopoly profits, if they are being made, are being reinvested into innovative new products, into new technology, into better production processes, whatever it might be. You might say there is a role for competition policy in that regard, to ensure that supernormal profits made by monopolists or oligopolists are actually being used in the public interest instead of just being given to shareholders all the time. And when will we see competition policy? When is there going to be intervention? What kind of scenarios might exist whereby intervention is necessary? Well, if there is any antitrust going on, so antitrust like collusive agreements, right, then there is a rationale, of course, for competition policy, but also cartel agreements. If ever there are cartels, again, rationale for intervention. So this is very much in oligopoly markets. If these things happen, we know that monopoly outcomes could be the end result. Hence, the public interest could be harmed. To investigate mergers, so in the UK, for example, if any mergers create market share of this merger greater than 25%, then you'll often see investigation by the Competition Authority to make sure that, again, that merger does not act against the public interest. To liberalise highly concentrated markets, as we've said before, and also to monitor state aid control. So, for example, within the EU, we know there are heavy subsidies, especially in the agricultural sector. The Common Agricultural Policy is a huge subsidy scheme given to farmers. So to make sure that if there are excessive subsidies given in one country, that doesn't distort competition or trade in another country. There is rationale for the Competition Authority to ensure that any state aid control, subsidies are the main kind of state aid control we're looking at here, does not distort competition or does not promote unfair competition in some countries compared to others, or in some industries compared to others, or for some firms in an industry compared to other firms. So that covers competition policy. Stay tuned for my next video, where we're going to look at specific ways in which competition authorities like the CMA can intervene to prevent monopoly outcomes and to promote the public interest. You must watch that video to understand different types of policies. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in that next video.